This story is titled The Confession. My name is Margaret. I'm 53 years old, living in a quiet suburb of Ohio, surrounded by manicured lawns and friendly neighbors. Life had always been steady, predictable even, until the day my fiancé Paul shattered the foundation of the life we were building together. Paul is 56, a kind-hearted man, or at least I thought so. He has a laugh that fills the room and a way of making you feel safe. We met 3 years ago at a local charity event. I was there to support a friend, and he was volunteering, folding napkins and setting tables. When he walked over to offer me a drink, there was an instant connection. His warmth drew me in like a moth to a flame. Over time, we built a life together. He moved into my modest home, blending our routines seamlessly. He was attentive, thoughtful, and always had a way of making me feel like I was the only woman in the world. When he proposed last year, it felt like the culmination of every love story I had ever dreamed of. But dreams, I've learned, have a way of turning into nightmares. It was 2 weeks before our wedding. The preparations were in full swing. Dress fittings, seating charts, and floral arrangements consumed my days. That evening, Paul came home from his bachelor party. I had encouraged him to go, knowing how much his friends adored him. He deserved a night of laughter and celebration. But when he walked through the door, his face was pale. His usual bright eyes seemed dimmed by an unseen weight. I laughed it off at first, thinking it was a hangover. "Too much whiskey?" I teased, but he didn't smile. "Margaret, can we talk?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. In that moment, my stomach dropped. Those 4 words carried a weight I wasn't ready for. We sat on the couch, and he took my hands in his, trembling slightly. "I need to tell you something," he began, and my heart raced. "I made a mistake last night." I pulled my hands away instinctively, the chill of fear running through me. "What kind of mistake, Paul?" My voice was steady, but inside I was crumbling. He took a deep breath, his eyes brimming with guilt. I had a one-night stand. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, suffocating and heavy. My mind couldn't process it at first. I sat there, staring at him, trying to comprehend how the man I loved could betray me so profoundly. "A one-night stand?" I repeated, my voice trembling. He nodded, his face a mask of regret. "It was a mistake, Margaret. I was drunk, and it just happened. It meant nothing, I swear. But to me, it meant everything." I stood up, pacing the room as my thoughts raced. Anger, heartbreak, disbelief, all of it crashed over me in waves. "You were supposed to be celebrating us, Paul, our love, our future, and you." My voice cracked, unable to finish the sentence. "I know," he said, his voice cracking too. "I know I messed up, and I hate myself for it. But I love you, Margaret. It was a moment of weakness, nothing more. Please, please don't let this destroy us." But how could it not? For days I walked around in a haze, barely able to eat or sleep. The betrayal gnawed at me, a constant reminder of how fragile trust could be. I replayed his confession over and over in my mind, wondering where I had gone wrong. Had I not been enough for him? Did he ever really love me? The wedding invitations had already been sent out, the venue booked, and my dress hung carefully in the closet. Every reminder of the upcoming wedding felt like a cruel joke. How could I stand in front of our friends and family, vowing to love and trust a man who had broken me so completely? Paul tried everything to make amends. He wrote me letters, apologizing for his mistake and professing his love. He even suggested counseling, hoping it would help rebuild what he had destroyed. But every time I looked at him, all I could see was the image of him with another woman, a faceless figure who had stolen the security I once felt in his arms. I thought about calling off the wedding, about packing up his things and sending him away. But then doubt crept in. Was one mistake enough to end what we had built together? People make mistakes, don't they? Could I find it in my heart to forgive him? The nights were the hardest. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship. The laughter, the tender moments, the promises we made. Were they all a lie? Or could they still be real, even after his betrayal? One night, as I sat alone in the living room, I opened a bottle of wine and let the tears flow freely. My mind was a battlefield, torn between love and pain, trust and betrayal. I wanted to believe him, to forgive him, but I didn't know if I could. As the days passed, I realized I needed answers, not just from Paul, but from myself. I needed to understand how we got here and whether there was any way forward. The days blurred into nights, and my mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. Could I forgive Paul? Could we rebuild what had been so recklessly shattered? Or was this the end of a love story that had promised so much? I decided to confront him again, needing to understand the depth of his betrayal. When I sat across from him at our kitchen table, his face looked as worn as I felt. "Paul," I began, my voice steady but laced with pain, "I need you to tell me everything. I can't move forward without the truth." He looked at me, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've told you everything, Margaret. I was drunk. It was stupid, meaningless. If I could take it back, I would. But how could you let it happen?" My voice cracked under the weight of my heartbreak. "We're weeks away from starting our lives together. Wasn't I enough for you?" His head dropped into his hands, his voice muffled as he spoke. "It wasn't about you, Margaret. It was my own stupidity, my own weakness. I wasn't thinking. I wish I could undo it, but I can't. All I can do is beg for your forgiveness." Forgiveness. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and oppressive. Could I ever truly forgive him? For days, I kept my distance, avoiding his touch, his gaze, his attempts to make amends. I poured myself into the wedding preparations as though completing them would somehow bring clarity. But every flower arrangement, every song choice felt hollow, like dressing a wound that refused to heal. And then, one evening, as I sat alone with a photo album of our memories, I found myself crying again. Not the bitter tears of anger, but the quiet, aching sobs of a woman mourning the future she thought she had. At night, I reached out to my closest friend, Emily, who had been my rock through so many of life's storms. Over cups of tea, I poured out everything, that from the moment Paul confessed to the sleepless nights that followed. "Do you still love him?" Emily asked gently, her gaze steady and compassionate. "I don't know," I admitted. "I want to, but it's changed everything." She leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. "Love is messy, Margaret. It's imperfect. But trust, that's the foundation. Without it, no amount of love can hold you together." Her words echoed in my mind long after she left. Trust. Could I ever trust Paul again? The following week, I decided to test that fragile foundation. Paul had suggested counseling, and though I had initially resisted, I realized I had nothing to lose. If we had any hope of salvaging our relationship, we needed help. Our first session was tense, the air thick with unspoken pain. The therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Harper, guided us through the emotional minefield. She asked Paul to recount the night of his mistake, not as an excuse, but as an explanation. He spoke hesitantly, his voice heavy with shame. "It started with a few drinks. My friends kept encouraging me, saying it was my last night of freedom. I didn't plan for it to happen. I wasn't thinking about anything but the moment." I listened, my heart breaking all over again. He wasn't making excuses, but his words didn't soothe the ache inside me. Dr. Harper turned to me, her voice gentle. "Margaret, how does this make you feel?" "Angry," I admitted. "Betrayed. I gave him my trust, my heart, and he threw it away." Paul looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I didn't throw it away, Margaret. I made a horrible mistake. But I love you. I want to spend my life making it up to you, proving that you can trust me again." "Can I?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The sessions continued, each one peeling back layers of hurt and guilt. Slowly, I began to see Paul's remorse as genuine. He wasn't the man who had made that one terrible choice. He was the man who had held me through sleepless nights, who had written me poems on rainy days, who had loved me deeply and wholly, until he faltered. But forgiveness is a process, not a decision. And trust? That would take time to rebuild. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, Paul reached for my hand. "Margaret, I know I've hurt you in ways I can never fully mend, but I want to spend the rest of my life trying. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please, don't give up on us." Tears welled in my eyes. His words were sincere, but sincerity alone couldn't erase the pain. "I don't know if I can," I admitted, "but I'm willing to try, for us." The weeks leading up to the wedding were a mix of hope and uncertainty. I questioned my decision daily, wondering if I was making a mistake. But as I stood in the bridal suite on our wedding day, looking at myself in the mirror, I realized something profound. Love isn't about perfection. It's about resilience. It's about choosing to fight for each other, even when it hurts. As I walked down the aisle, my heart pounded. Paul stood at the altar, his eyes filled with tears. In that moment, I saw not a man who had betrayed me, but a man who was deeply flawed and deeply sorry, a man who loved me enough to fight for our future. When we exchanged vows, his voice trembled. "Margaret, I promise to spend every day earning your trust and your love. I will never take it for granted again." My heart softened as I spoke my vows, choosing to believe in the possibility of healing. Our marriage wasn't perfect. No marriage is. But we worked together day by day, rebuilding what had been broken. It was a journey of forgiveness, patience, and rediscovering love. And though the scars of his mistake remained, they became a testament to the strength we found in each other, a strength that turned our broken pieces into something beautiful. If this story resonates with you, like, comment, and subscribe.